Okay, welcome everybody to this next session of the Creatress Rising. Welcome sisters, welcome one, welcome all. Today in this session, I have a really beautiful guest, Annie, and Annie is the founder of a beautiful movement, Vinyasa Primal Yoga. As soon as I saw this platform that Annie's created and this method, I was absolutely in love. The idea of yoga and getting really primal with movement just really sparked something wild in me. And so I hunted Annie down until she said yes to coming here with us. And I am so grateful that you're here today, Annie. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. I'm really excited to be on your platform and really reach more people. So thanks for having me.
Great. Annie, tell me, how did you get started with your journey into movement and yoga?
Okay. So it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to try to stay concise because it could take up the whole time. But
I've got more questions.
I was a teen mom. I had my daughter when I was 17. So when I was a junior in high school. And so being a teen mom and not being able to finish high school, I had to jump right into a job at a young age. And that was in childcare. And that was in taking care of movement because I wanted to be with my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I ended up working at a ski resort and helping to manage and run a program called Kinder Camp. And my job was to help the kids, get out there and ski. And then I ended up snowboarding quite extensively and got pretty extreme in my sports with snowboarding, which led to quite a bit of injuries. I also taught movement to the kids. And so I was kind of developing some yoga movement for them because, things to do. But as I continued my kind of snowboarding career, I kept hurting myself. And I needed to find a way to repair my body. And that was through yoga. So I started really practicing yoga when I was about 18. My sister and I started with, like most people, Bikram yoga or hot yoga. We started in that world and it was wonderful. It was a great place to start. And then I ended up finding my way to Vinyasa and then Anusara yoga, where I went all the way through certification. I spent a decade certifying and learning that, which has a path of Tantra. I had amazing teachers in that school of wisdom. So I spent a good decade there and then started a career with yoga therapy. I opened up my private practice when I was pretty young. I was about 21 and started working with clients one-on-one and trying to make, ends meet between being a young mom. And I would work with people a little bit here and there. And then work these different jobs and then help people with injuries. And so I really opened my practice full time when I was 25, a year after we bought Yoga Union. So when we bought the studio, I was only 24 years old and running a big giant community. What I found over time was working with people that a lot of the standard yoga poses and the prescriptive models weren't working for people when it came to repair. Mm-hmm. And it was actually allowing them to have body autonomy and to move out of the confines of the shapes that started to create and unwind some of those movement patterns. As I was working with children and studying childhood development and sensory processing, I was noticing in the sensory processing world how they were teaching people to really rehab their brain with movement. And a lot of that was through the contralateral movements and different diversity of motions and crawling and rolling over and walking and basically repatterning back to the basics. And so I had spent a good 5-6 years teaching people the standard shapes and really strict alignment. And sometimes it worked, but most of the time we had to color outside the lines. And so I went through a pretty extensive case study. I had some mentors in there and they sat with me for 5 years taking notes and really watching what it is that I do with students. And what we did is we actually took a step back and looked at my body of work and said, actually, there's a system here that I'm working through. And so in Primal Vinyasa, there's 5 categories of movement. We start with fundamentals, which is all about the head and neck movement, the AO joints, moving into crawling, walking, rolling over, repatterning some of those base movements. And then we head into contralateral. So we're cross signaling the brain kind of back to some of those movements again, and cross body core and connecting front to back. And then we're building the sensory processing. So how it is that we use our eyes, our sight, our touch, our proprioception, our interoception. And then from there, we go into ground reaction forces, where we work with jumping and moving and kind of leaving the ground, where there's those plyometric aspects to it. Then from there, we move into migration. So we're getting off the mat and taking up a lot of space. So through my case studies and the development of working with clients, I created and trademarked a body of work that ultimately repairs not just the body in the way of pain and injury, but the mind and the emotions, and kind of getting back to the place within ourselves where we believe in ourselves again. And our motto with Primal Vinyasa is movement is your birthright. And I truly believe that it is our birthright to trust our bodies again. And so Primal Vinyasa ultimately re-inspires all of us to trust our bodies again in the way in which we move.
Yes. And that's so important. You know, for me as a mom, like I was really active, soccer, horse riding, all of that before having kids. And then having kids and the kind of, your body goes through all these changes, but there's also the stress levels come up, and it's like my body became this other thing, and
yeah.
And it's really some of the fundamentals that I've been watching in your program, and just some of the awarenesses that I have in my own intuitive practices, just kind of bringing my body back into its place, and really like teaching my body how to be this centered, whole, grounded, woman again, this container again. And I cannot say how important it's been for me, but I really feel that is the basis of what you're teaching, and I just love it. I love it.
Thank you. And last piece there is one of the big pieces about Primal Vinyasa's method and the way that I teach. And I've trained people all over the world. I have teachers everywhere. They're fabulous, but we teach an inquiry-based type of movement instead of more of a dogmatic approach. Like, this goes there for how long? So with Primal Vinyasa, we're setting up the shape, and we're offering suggestions inside of that, where there's an inquiry based. Can you sense? Are you able to feel? Choose your own tempo, choose your own timing. And so that people have an opportunity to get out of the box and the prescription of yoga. Because even as an herbalist, I don't teach an allopathic approach. So with movement, I no longer prescribe to an allopathic approach of movement. It's very holistic, and it's inquiry-based that, again, ultimately creates body autonomy and comprehension.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. And so what is it about that kind of work that is important for you in your day-to-day life? Like, how have things really started to shift for you since you took on that more inquiry-based or intuitive-based movement?
Well, for one, I'm not in pain anymore. And so, oftentimes we think, okay, we can move literally like shit all day. And then we try to go do this yoga practice that is supposed to be conscious. And then we get out and then we move around. We're not realizing how we're picking up our baby, how we're moving the groceries in and out, how we're getting up and down, how we're sleeping, how we're holding our head or sitting, any of those positions. And so Primal Vinyasa is, again, this awakening to one's own senses. That's where those sensory processing, where we can get those signals of, oh, I'm holding my neck in this way, or every time I squat down, I do this, or, when I'm nursing, I'm sitting like this, or when I'm working at the computer, it transfers. If it doesn't transfer from the movement practice into our lives, it's really not, it's just something that we do to entertain ourselves, or to get a workout or something. So when I work with clients one-on-one, the first thing that I do is we really address how they move throughout their lives, because that's 99% of the movement. And then we start to train, those, and we can take a yoga class, but those skills transfer into our lives. So for me, when I started noticing how I hold my head, how I hold my body, and I'm not practicing in a way that is injurious or forcing myself into shapes, I'm no longer hurting myself. So I can still snowboard, I can still wakeboard, I can still do the things that I love to do a CrossFit class, do even a fast-paced vinyasa class. And I have a different kind of consciousness that I've trained myself into. So I feel like now I can do anything because I have more body intelligence and comprehension. So that's really what we teach. So that it's not my yoga is better than somebody else's. I don't prescribe to that model either. It's really that with Primal Vinyasa, you have an opportunity to reclaim your own senses and feel more deeply into what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And, you know, just the aspect of not being in pain anymore. It's like, how debilitating is pain really? You know, I look at your platform and what you've created with, you know, Primal Vinyasa Yoga, and it speaks volumes to how full and vibrant you know your creatress really is within you, because what you've done is beautiful. And somebody who's living in pain is, you know, your creatress cannot rise when you're living in pain. So just moving through that must have been life-changing for yourself.
Yeah. I lived with pain for a lot of years, and so do my clients too, and students, and they find their way to this practice and this method, and it unlocks those hidden aspects of ourselves that, you know, we feel caged inside our own movements. And that's, again, there is a place for alignment. There actually is a place for instruction and alignment and put this here and do this there. But when it's done only in that way, we lose the magic of unlocking the potential within, because it only comes from our own, like you said, just rising, that place within ourselves where we rise and we move out of the prescription and we move out of the box. But the container is a place to start. But in order to shift the pain pattern, we have to move out of the prescription. Yeah.
And like this kind of, you know, we've half answered my next question. So I'm just going to evolve it a little bit. You mentioned before that you look into like the emotional element as well as the physical element. How is our bodies and our emotions so connected? Like, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So also in what we do and what we teach is reclaiming the blessing energy, and almost like alchemy or alchemizing the movement. So a lot of the movements that we do are, you know, offering it up or releasing it down, moving energy out or drawing energy in. And there's different aspects where we can play with that, where sometimes people really need to gesture like they've been taking on a lot and they need to move energy out. Right? Or they feel depleted and they need to nourish and move energy in. And so we give suggestion in place where the gestures become mudras of our own alchemy. And so there is a way in which the movement becomes prayer and becomes blessing, and people learn this with themselves. And so I can see, you know, with some of my clients, they'll just, you know, there'll be a hard day and I'll see them just moving energy, or saying and learning blessings and prayer in a different kind of way that's not dogmatic. And so I don't separate the mind from the body, from the spirit, from the senses, from the soul. That is that holistic approach. And so I've been really forthright and brave in my approach with Primal Vinyasa to not be afraid of bringing in those thematic aspects and installations of prayer and installations of blessing, and allowing people to learn how they can alchemize those emotions and use their pain and use their sorrow and use their stories as fuel to really grow themselves more fully. So there is no separation.
Yeah, beautiful. And so when you are feeling stuck or angry or sad or those kinds of things, what kind of movements do you do to release that and to, you know, to let that vibration go?
Yeah. So again, it's dependent. And that's kind of like, people ask me this with herbs, like, hey, I'm having like stuff with my cycle. Like, what herb do I use? And I'm like, well, that depends on your constitution.
Yeah.
It depends on a lot of things, right? Do you run hot? Do you run cold? How are you feeling today? What season are you in? What part of the world do you live in? All of those factors matter. And so the same thing goes with movement. So sometimes there's a day where I would feel maybe depleted and run down, and I need to do a practice that feels really nourishing. Or I've had a day where I'm on the computer and I'm working a lot and I feel really stagnant and I need to jump and move my lymph and mobilize my tissues. And so I have those abilities. And again, that's part of learning more about, okay, do I feel damp and stagnant? Do I feel windy and excited? Do I feel tense and hot? Do I feel, all of these different tissue states that we can feel are aspects of ourselves. And then we can move in support of that. So almost like a homeopathic approach. Sometimes we might, take that homeopathic approach where I'm feeling tired, but if I lay down, I'm not going to really generate the energy. So if we're feeling tired, we meet it on a spectrum and slowly build. Or if we're feeling anxious, we might need to shake and move the energy. Or we take that opposite end of the spectrum where we meet that wind tension with a grounding perspective. And so I really try my best to teach people to pay attention to their nervous system and to pay attention to those different tissue states or the experiences of their day so that they have choices of movement. I think for myself, I tend to get really stagnant in my tissues. Like I feel like my lymph builds up. Sometimes I feel kind of like swollen. So I do in general like to do a lot of shaking and jumping and moving. It feels really good for me. But for some people, they need a slower, deeper grounding practice. And for somebody, it could be really agitating, so we want to be able to have choice.
Yeah, I love that. It's such an intuitive approach for you, or it's such a, a moment by moment. It's like, it's almost as if you can't move right by your body unless you're really tuned into your body, just going to a yoga class or just doing a class at the gym or those kinds of things. It may be right for you sometimes, or it may not be right for you. And when it's not right for you, what you really need to do is drop in and learn how to really tune into your body and what does your body feel and how are you wanting to move today?
Yeah.
Not so much how do you think you should move today. It's how do you, my body, my legs, my arms, how does that want to move?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're really in a time where people want choice. We want choice and we want freedom and we want agency over our choices. I think as a planet, we're really talking about this. And in what I teach, I'm reminding people, or we're kind of unlearning that there's one way or there's a prescriptive model. And we hear this a lot in yoga, like listen to your body or feel your body. But unfortunately, most of us are orphaned from the ability to do that. And so it takes choice. It's like with kids, we don't say you can have anything you want for dinner because then they don't know what they want. But sometimes it's 3 choices where it's this, or this, and they can make a decision out of something like that, or at the store. When we have choice, we really build our confidence. And so when I teach Primal Vinyasa, it's not do whatever you want in the movement, like just eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, because then there's no boundaries. And then there's no anything to anchor into, then we lose the method and we lose some skill. And so it's really about the choice. Like I was saying, notice when you move, take your arms out and move energy from your center out, or draw energy in. So as we're kind of moving, you give people 2 choices and then they can decide for themselves what they need that day. And so it's not a do whatever you want method. It's start to learn about yourself on a deeper level. But we almost have to unlearn in order to remember that we actually do know ourselves very deeply. But because of the culture, we don't know how to listen oftentimes.
Yeah. Amazing. So, Annie, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. I know that you have an incredible library of videos and tools and instructions and probably retreats and all sorts of things that you offer. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the videos that you might put here on the Creatress Rising app?
Some of the viewers.
Some of the videos. Sorry.
Oh, some of the videos. Yes, exactly. So I want to do a sampling of the 5 different categories of movement, so that you all get a chance to experience that, where it's moving through the method. And then from there, I want to put in some other videos, where there's that alchemy aspect of really moving energy too. And so that all of you get a chance to really experience it for yourself. So I want to give a good sampling of some different, maybe we'll do some 20 minutes or some hour, but I think it's important that I have over 300 videos, so we can definitely play with that, and I'll definitely give you all my favorites and some of the ones that people really go back to and watch again and again.
Great. Thank you so much, Annie, and it's been such a pleasure to have you here on this Creatress Rising show.
Thank you. I'm honored deeply.
Great.